Good morning, FPSers, and welcome to your first video lesson on the FPS process. The first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to fill you in as to what the FPS process is and how it works. The first thing that will happen when you sit down with your teams to compete is you'll be given a future scene. Now, this future scene comes in many different styles. It may be a story. It typically is a story, but sometimes it could be a letter, a journal, anything like that. So it varies, but it'll give you the tools necessary to move on throughout the final, or the other 6 steps rather, in the FPS process. So with that, the first step is creating challenges. You're going to, with your teams, create 16 challenges that you find with the future scene. And from those 16 challenges, you're going to identify the one that is the most important. Now in step 2, you take the one that's most important and you create an underlying problem with a given formula, which we'll get into later. And then from that underlying problem or most important challenge, you move on to step 3, in which with your team you create 16 solutions. Now these 16 solutions will help you move into step 4, in which you create criteria to judge those solutions. Now step 5 is you use that criteria in those solutions, and you apply that criteria to those solutions so that the best solution wins. And then based off of your best solution, you're able to, in step 6, create an overall action plan. How are you going to attack, or how are you going to solve that main problem that you created in step 2? So the first thing, before we even get into step 1, is what we like to call step 0. And this deals with the future scene that you're given. Now, the future scene that you're given will be step 0. Essentially, step 0 is the first thing that we ever do in the FPS process. While you're given your future scene and each team member is reading through it, you want to identify certain things within the future scene. So, the first thing being time, the next thing being the place, and the final thing being the topic. So these are 3 things that you'll want to identify, and there's one more, we'll get into that in the next lesson. But there's 3 things that you want to identify as you go through this future scene, because these 3 things will be needed throughout your writing with your team. So the first thing is time. When you look through this future scene, you need to know, when is this happening? Often they will the next thing that you'll be given is, or the next thing that you'll need to know, is the place. So we have the time, when is this happening? Now the place, where is this happening? And finally, we need to know the topic. And so just like the overall topic of the given future scene. And so what I'm going to do is, with these in mind, remember you need the time, place, topic. With those in mind, I want you guys to go to the, I believe it's in the activity/forms part of the website that I created. And under it, you're going to find the first link under today's date, September 16th, and I want you to click on that, and it'll bring you up to an article. Now, the article that you're going to read should be titled, "Indigenous Brazilians Use Work to Fight for Rights." And although that's not what a scene looks like, it is part of the research that we're doing before we prepare for the first practice problem, which is the impact of social media. So it's kind of just a good way to start you out and get you accustomed to finding the time, place, and topic in the things that you read. So I'm going to let you do that now. So pause the video now and get to that. And then in your groups, I would like you to read through that article and find the time, place, and topic, and then we'll reconvene in a little bit. Now that you've done that, I'd like to go over what exactly the time, place, and topic are for that given article. So with the article, it's kind of it's given to you in a very direct way as far as what the time is, because it shows you when the article was written. So we can say that the article is, or the time is 2013. The article was written in 2013. If that's fair enough. You may think that you might have put down 2011 because in the article it talks about how the political leader of Brazil took office in 2011, but we want to make sure to look out for that and not choose that. And this is what we call a red herring. This is something that they throw into these future scenes to throw people off. So although it's saying this happened since 2011, this happened, but really the article is taking place in 2013. So we want to make sure we don't get thrown off by these little things they put in there. As far as the place is concerned, acceptable things might have been Brazil. Maybe you might have put Brasilia, Brazil, or Cidrolandia, which is the place the exact place this is taking place in, or Mato Grosso do Sul, which is, I guess, the region of Brazil that this took place in, or this event. You could put those. You might get away with those in the FPS process, but I think the best one for you to put, or the safest bet, would just to say Brazil. Brazil would probably be the safest one to put as far as place is concerned. And you may have even put world. The world is your place, because in the article it does talk about how this event in the scene garnered world attention, but that's not the actual place. That's another red herring. The actual place is where this is happening is Brazil. So make sure you keep that in mind. And finally, the topic. You might have put anything from, I don't know, human rights, technology, to equality, maybe the indigenous peoples of Brazil, which I guess could be right, but not in FPS. And here's why. Because the topic will be the easiest thing that you'll always be able to get, because you'll always know your topic going in to the writing. As we know, the practice problem, the title or the topic is impact of social media. So your topic is always going to be the title, or what you're going in research that you've already researched. So the topic for this article is the impact of social media. So we can effectively say that. And so the next article, which also deals with something similar, the topic will also be the impact of social media. So when you go in to write with your FPS team, and you go in to look at the time, place, and topic in the future scene that you're actually given on October 23rd, you can be rest assured that your topic will be this impact of social media. It's always going to be that way. And so whenever the next scenario or writing process competition is maybe on propaganda, the topic will be propaganda. So with that said, I have another article. It's in the same activities/forums area, and it's the second link under September 26th. And when you click on it, it should be titled "Young and Old Use Social Media for Surprisingly Different Reasons." And so I'd like you in your groups to read that and come up with what you believe is the time, place, and topic. And then, so pause the video now, and then we'll come back and we'll discuss it. All right. Now that you've done that, it's time to look at what you put down for time, place, and topic, and what the right answers should be. Once again, looking at the fact that it's an article, we can say that the time is 2012 because in the top corner it tells you when the article is written. So we can effectively say 2012. Now for the place, actually one thing about the time, make sure when you're one more thing about the time, make sure when you're going through, this is a whole other deal with the red herring, make sure when you're going through to pay close attention, because sometimes they'll do this. Sometimes they'll say, in 2020, this happened now, 10 years later, and then they give you the scene. So you're expected to know that the actual place is 2030 because you have to add those 10 years on because the actual scene's taking place in 2030 and it gave you a 2020 flashback. It also might say in 2020 this happened. Now, 2 months later, this happened. And so you could probably get away with saying 2020, but your best choice or your best answer would most likely be 2020 and beyond. And this is because we can't be sure if they're just saying 2020 then 2 months later, because we're not sure if it wasn't December of 2020, because if it was December of 2020 then 2 months later it would be February of 2021. And so since we're not given that information, you can say 2020 and beyond as your time. Anyway, so back to the article. It says that we know that the time is 2012. The place is Norway. You might have put in Oslo, Norway, which talks about the place of research, but as a whole, it's talking about the Norwegian public, and it's specific to Norway as a whole. So I guess your best bet there would be Norway, Oslo, Norway being more of a red herring. So I want you to shy away from stuff like that. And then the topic, as we know, is the impact of social media. So with that said, that concludes the video lesson. And with that said, that concludes today's video lesson. This concludes today's video. That concludes today's video lesson. And so tomorrow we'll dig a little bit deeper into this, so that you guys can become experts on knowing exactly what to pinpoint as you go through the future scene.